On today's episode of the Cryptoverse, after all the accusations that Bitcoin is used by criminals, Western Union admits to money laundering and is fined $586 million. Oh, that's gotta hurt. Dash is the privacy-focused digital currency that offers transactions with instant confirmations. Its unique, decentralized decision-making and self-funding system make it an ideal choice as a stable and secure digital cash. Click the link in the video description to learn more. Hi there guys, and welcome to the latest episode of the Cryptoverse, your regular dose of news and commentary on Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, and blockchains. I am your host, Chris Coney. Today is Monday, the 23rd of January, 2017, so let's get into today's episode. And of course, we always start off at coinmarketcap.com to take a quick look at the cryptocurrency prices. The biggest loser of the day is Ethereum Classic, which ranks as the 6th most capitalized coin, and it has lost 4.21% of its value in the last 24 hours, making an Ethereum Classic token worth $1.38. I saw some interesting rumblings on Reddit about Ethereum Classic. There's some rumblings going on about copyright infringement, that Ethereum Classic isn't allowed to call itself Ethereum because it's a trademark of Ethereum Core. I mean, so far, I've only read a few headlines and a few Reddit posts. I'm going to have to dig into this a bit more, but seems very interesting and contentious to me. So we'll see how that pans out. The biggest winner of the day, I'm pleased to say, is Factom. A Factom coin is now worth $3.18, having gained 5.38% of its value. And Factom ranks as the 13th most capitalized coin. Now, I'm sure you know what Ethereum Classic is. It was the fork of Ethereum Core after the Ethereum Core decided to, hard fork and reset the account balances after the DAO fiasco. And of course, Ethereum Classic and Ethereum Core are both decentralized computing platforms to build decentralized apps on. And Factom is a blockchain where you can embed data into it. So if you've got a medical database or something, then you can go to Factom and they'll help you embed that data into the blockchain. That's what Factom does. In terms of the Bitcoin price, then we turn to bitcoinwisdom.com. Let's take a look at the dollar price to begin with. Very interesting things happening yesterday. You know, I was saying that the $900 mark was where all this interaction was happening. Well, yesterday we have this great big low test bar. I was saying that, look for either a buy or a sell signal, and when would you know, how would you know when to buy and when to sell? Well, I said the next buy opportunity would be when it breaks 900 and then it confirms that. So far we have the 21st of January, which was a buyer day, up 3% on that day and closed $921. So that was on Saturday. And then so the day closed above the $900 mark. And then the following day, the low went below 900, but bounced right back up again. So those two are bullish signals, especially yesterday's day, which the trading price went way down here to $889 and was rejected. So there was enough buying power to push it right back up to the top. Then again, if you look at today's, it's similar in that it's a sort of a low test bar. It's a very small range, but so far it's stayed well away from the $900 mark. So all very bullish stuff going on there. In terms of the yuan price, there are two intersecting points here. There's 6,500, which is keeping the price down at the moment, which also intersects with my 38.2% Fibonacci retracement line, which happens to sit at 6,422. Like I said the other day, the main difference with this chart is you see that the 50-day moving average, which is my thin blue line, is acting like this moving line of support. And that seems to be continuing. You look at yesterday's low test bar, the shape of that candle is very much similar to the one on the dollar chart. And again, its low price was supported by the 50-day moving average. So that's that claim I made the other day, that seems to be one of the character traits more recently from this chart is continuing. And what you can see happening there, though, if that is true, is that there's going to be an increasing amount of pressure built up in between this line of resistance here at 6,500 and this moving line of support is going to get squashed and squashed and squashed and squashed. And eventually there's not going to be any room left. And one of two things is going to happen. One of them is going to break. Either the 50 moving average is going to break and the price is going to go down, or this line here at 6,500 is going to break, and then the price is going to shoot up. In terms of the news then, I've turned to the Cointelegraph for this article entitled Western Union is fined $586 million for money laundering and fraudulent transfers. You know, one of my patrons sent me this article on Friday, literally 15 minutes after it was published. And I'm sorry, when I read it, I giggled my ass off, which I know is not very gracious. No one's perfect. I'm working on it. So let's see what this article's got to say for itself. It says remittance giant Western Union has been fined $586 million after admitting to money laundering and supporting fraudulent wire transfers. The penalty of $586 million will be used as a refund for the victims of the crimes. So does that mean this is the amount of money that was actually laundered? I assume so, because if they're going to make those people whole, they're going to use this money to refund the victim. So I assume that's roughly on par with how much money was scammed out of them. Now, the thing that surprised me about this story the most was that Western Union actually admitted it. Can you believe that? Now, it goes on to talk about negligence here. It says, Edith Ramirez, chair of the Federal Trade Commission, noted that, quote, Western Union owes a responsibility to American consumers to guard them against fraud. But instead, the company looked the other way and its system facilitated scammers and rip-off artists. Close quote. Okay, so why did they look the other way? Is it because Jesus told them to turn the other cheek? No, I don't think so. It's because it was profitable for them to do so. And there's an incentive there to be dishonest. Now, I know you've heard this principle from me a dozen times before, but I don't care. Whatever you reward, you get more of. Whatever you punish, you get less of. So yes, they have been punished, but this is a rarity. So when you look at the risk to reward ratio, it's still hugely profitable. So the scales are tipped severely on the side of reward versus risk or cost. And often, especially financial institutions who knowingly engage in questionable activity, they just price the fines into the cost of business. In fact, I seem to remember many years ago when Microsoft had all of that, antitrust, monopolizing behavior that they got done for. I think they were behaving in the same way. They were like, well, if we make $7 billion a year in sales and we only have to pay out $700 million in fines, right, fine, we'll just put it down as a legal expense, right? And carry on what we're doing. Because if all we have to do is pay a portion of our profits, then it's good business, isn't it? Now, granted, you have to throw your moral compass right out of the window, but that's another story. So it says here, Western Union will enter into an agreement with the Department of Justice to provide clear and conspicuous consumer fraud warnings on its paper and electronic money transfer forms to increase the availability of websites and telephone numbers that enable consumers to file fraud complaints and to refund a fraudulently induced money transfer if the company failed to comply with its anti-fraud procedures in connection with that transaction. So this is going to become like cigarette packets. I don't know how this is done elsewhere in the world, but in the UK, there are these high-definition, full-colour, quite graphic images of diseases that are associated with smoking. And this is supposed to make you aware of the consequences of what you're buying. So while adding this consumer protection labeling is logical, I can see it harming Western Union's business because it's going to create doubt in people's minds. And when it comes to money, people tend to be very sensitive, and any sign of risk tends to get over-exaggerated. So this new perceived risk may well put a certain group of people off using Western Union and perhaps cause them to look for alternatives. The other thing this is going to do, to my mind, is going to increase the cost to Western Union, which is going to actually cause them to probably increase their fees to pay for it, which of course only harms the legitimate customers, the majority of their customers that are legitimate, who haven't done anything wrong. So, this is terrible. Anyway, the article finishes with this section called Official Hypocrisy. It says, since 2009, when Bitcoin was first launched, governments have been pointing fingers at Bitcoin and other digital currencies as a conduit for money laundering and fraudulent activities. Many crypto experts believe that the accusations were unfounded, looking at the meager market cap of Bitcoin. Well, I don't know about that. About $100 million worth of Bitcoin has been traded in the last 24 hours. That's enough for at least some small-time criminals to make use of it. In terms of being defrauded, though, there are some simple concepts like multi-sig transactions used in combination with things like anonymous arbitration, much like what BitSquare does, that would go a long way here. Or even when the lock time operations are merged into Bitcoin's code, that will allow us to create like delayed transactions. And that delay would afford someone time to either cancel a transaction or allow them to verify the other person's identity, right? I also heard a guy from a company called Elliptic speak at a conference last year, and he showed us how they do blockchain analytics, and that's what their business is. And they identify like illicit activity on the blockchain for financial institutions and law enforcement and so on. And what they showed us, it's actually really clever stuff. The problem with Western Union, though, is that their transactions are all private in their private database, whereas Bitcoin's blockchain is publicly auditable by anybody. So thanks for joining me today, guys. If you liked this episode, hit the like button. If you disliked it, hit the dislike button. Please leave me a comment below with some feedback and get subscribed. And please support the Cryptoverse and boost cryptocurrency adoption by going to cryptoversity.com/podcast and becoming a patron. From as little as $10 a month, you can secure Cryptoversity's future, get unlimited access to all Cryptoversity courses, and access a private patrons-only chat group where you get direct access to me. That is all for today, guys. I will be back tomorrow with another episode of the Cryptoverse. So until then, it's me, Chris Coney, saying bye for now.